Everyone, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Jonathan Johnson, uh, who is currently at CBS Sports and Eurosport, but has had a glittered career as a freelance journalist based in Paris, working for ESPN, Associated Press, Bleacher, and many, many more. Over that time, his closest associations have been with PSG related work, most notable, and he's done his freelance commentary, writing, video, and again, many, many more media. First question, Jonathan, how are you? I've seen some parts of France going into lockdown again. Is that affecting you?
Yes, well, thanks for inviting me, first of all. Yeah, it's a strange situation in France. Yes, we do have the lockdown, but it's been sort of eased and pushed back by an hour, but all the shops have been closed pretty much except for the absolute essentials. So it's quite limiting. And obviously everyone's a bit frustrated with it, a bit bored of it now. It's been more than a year. So, everyone's just really looking forward to it being over.
No, I think everyone is. Are you doing any work this week with the France national team? Deschamps with another notoriously stubborn squad selection, which I've seen annoying a few people.
Yeah, well, I was there at Stade de France for the match against Ukraine, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't a good performance. And yeah, there's obviously a lot of criticism for Deschamps because he's not the most experimental of coaches, and France is blessed with so much, good young talent. It's kind of feels like they're not really tapping into their potential a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see that. I'm going to take a sort of semi-chronological approach to combo, if that's all right. So starting off in your youth, did you have a long-term ambition of being a journalist in school? And was your choice of history and journalism as a degree, pretty conscious?
Well, obviously my dream growing up, like for the majority of, guys and girls my age, was to become a professional footballer. And when you realize that you're not going to make the grade, I wanted to find somewhere that I could stay close to football, to keep that passion going. And journalism seemed like the right choice for me. It's something that I've been doing from a young age. I remember my family liked to tell people that I was writing match reports, film reviews, this sort of thing from quite a young age. And just sort of developed from there. Really, the choice of studying history with journalism, I was quite limited in the universities I could go to in and around London. That would enable me to study what was my strongest subject, history, but also do a bit of journalism on the side, and also keep me within range of places that I started doing work experience with, like the Daily Express newspaper. So, all of that kind of factored into my thinking, and I had to wait for the course to start up at Hertfordshire before I could actually go. So I actually went a year after my friends.
Oh, wow. I did see the Daily Express experience on your LinkedIn. I saw that you said you were covering West Ham in 2006, or at least did a few things related to West Ham. Was it fun to cover them then? Because this was obviously just after the Tevez and Mascherano transfer saga.
Yeah, when I mentioned West Ham, it was more going to a couple of press conferences. I think Alan Kirbishley was the coach at that time. It wasn't just West Ham. I got to see a couple of different clubs up close, Fulham as well. And it's, it was an interesting time, and obviously, sort of one of my first experiences of actually going to sort of a football club's training ground, and getting to speak to somebody like a manager, and sort of get a feel for that journalistic environment.
Yeah, and after I saw that you, as one of your first postgrad gigs, you ended up as an assistant producer for Sky Sports. Was there a lot of like organisation qualities you needed in that role, or was it mainly like behind the scenes stuff, or what was that experience like?
I didn't just walk into the role of assistant producer at Sky Sports. That was sort of the culmination of many years of work. Basically, I started out as a runner with Sky during my work experience, impressed enough to be kept on. And although I enjoyed seeing the different sports that I was doing, like a bit of golf, bit of tennis, even a bit of fishing. My passion was for football, and I really wanted to get on one of the football teams. So I asked if I could be sort of assigned to one of the football shows, and there just happened to be an opening at Soccer Saturday. So I quickly became a member of the team there. Sort of worked my way up from there, sort of being a runner, sorting out the contracts. Making sure the guests signed them, that sort of thing, making teas, coffees, getting food orders. And then, sort of worked my way up from there. I was in charge of the stats that went out on the graphics, for quite a while. And then eventually, sort of started to cut my teeth with bits of video content, doing the occasional interview as well. So it was sort of maybe about 2.5 years, so about halfway through my 5 years at Sky, that I started really doing the video content aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, watching Soccer Saturday now, and even for the last 10 years, it's such a slick show to watch, and the goal that's coming through. Is it carnage behind the scenes, or people? Is it quite a slick operation?
I mean, I don't know what it would be like now. I mean, I've gone back and visited a couple of times and caught up with old colleagues, but I don't know, sort of if they have ways of making the operation easier compared to how it was when I was there. I mean, it was, pretty mad doing the job that I was doing, checking all of the the details going out on the graphics. And the job of being producer is also quite demanding as well. They obviously, there was a strong chemistry that had been built up over a number of years, but my understanding is that it's quite a new team now compared to the one that I worked with. A lot of the guests have moved on. I think only Paul Merson and Jeff Stelling remain. Some of the older guys have been moved on. And, I think its success was born out of the fact that everybody was so comfortable around each other. Those kind of shows, certain parts were like scripted, certain sections, but then, a lot of the show, would just write its own script, because of the chemistry between Jeff and the guests, and the producer would be, quite happy to let them riff for as long as they wanted on certain topics. So I think it's if it looked slick from the outside, it's because you had some very good, very professional people who've been doing it a long time and were very familiar with each other. I think that it was probably madness when they first started out before I joined.
Yeah, no, it's the key to everything, having good relations. Also, another one of your early gigs was covering the San Jose earthquakes on a trip to London. That's really niche. Did you enjoy covering something that niche? And
yeah, I mean, it was exciting for me. I always knew that I wanted to be a foreign football correspondent. I didn't want to sort of just stay with Premier League teams. I had the passion for French football after being a season ticket holder when I lived in Paris the first time, and I saw the potential for there to be opportunities in Major League Soccer. So I got in touch with them and started doing bits and pieces. And, one of the things that they wanted me to do was follow San Jose when they came over for one of their pre-seasons. So that's how I ended up doing that gig. And yeah, it was, it's very interesting at that time. I mean, Major League Soccer is a developing league, but at that time it was, quite far behind where it is now. There weren't any real major stars in that team. So I think the thing that was really good about that was that they were all so accessible. You wouldn't be able to get that sort of access with a Premier League club or even a sort of medium-sized European club.
No, absolutely. And it was also in around 2011, 2012 time, I believe, you started doing the French Football Weekly pod and, starting to develop a focus on Ligue 1. Was it a really fun time to start properly covering Ligue 1? Because you have Montpellier's title win in 2011 and then PSG really becoming a force. So, yeah, was it an exciting time to cover Ligue
1? Yeah, it was. I mean, everything changed for me in 2011 because that's when I decided to leave Sky and leave London and return to Paris with the idea, with the hope of establishing myself sort of within 18 months. It took around about 12 for the first real sort of paid journalistic opportunities to come in. But one of the things that I tried to launch, to make people sort of more aware of my capabilities as a journalist was French Football Weekly. So yeah, it was a really exciting time to be covering French football. Obviously, the Qatari takeover at PSG was very new in 2011. Montpellier winning in 2012 was good in many ways. But it also delayed the PSG project getting off the ground a little bit. But, had they not lost the title to Montpellier that season, they might not have gone out and signed the likes of Thiago Silva and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. That summer of 2012 was when it really changed. That's, sort of when PSG started making moves that really made them a continental giant. And, that's when things started to get really interesting. So I've always been a fan and very passionate about Ligue 1. But it was sort of more interesting for people from the outside, once PSG managed to bring these kind of players in, especially when they'd be given a run for their money by some of the French teams.
No, absolutely. I remember my interest in Ligue 1 really started to kick off at that time as well. And then also in 2013, I think you did your first coverage of an African Cup of Nations when Nigeria were really impressive and Burkina Faso had that a really fun run, an unexpected run to a final. Did you enjoy covering a tournament outside of Europe and widening the horizon a little bit? And obviously there's a large contingent of Ligue 1 players playing in the tournament as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why, I think I was presented with the opportunity because obviously the interest in it in a French-speaking country is so big, so high, that there are certain TV channels based here in Paris that need to show it. So yeah, there was a really interesting experience for me. I think the thing that I liked the most about it was a lot of my commentary gigs would just be me sat in front of a screen commentating a match, like the Belgian football, the Greek football, the French third tier, and French basketball as well. That sort of thing I'd always done on my own. But to do this with a co-commentator, an ex-player as well, was really, quite valuable for me. And, it was, just happened to be a very good tournament to cover with a lot of exciting teams, players, and sort of unexpected successes. So no, it was, it's a good memory for me. To be honest, of all the things that I do in my work, commentary is probably not one of my favorites. But when I'm doing something like that, with somebody who's also very passionate about the match or the tournament that we're covering, that makes it so much easier and more enjoyable.
How long does it usually take to prep for a commentary gig? Because you have to write down maybe like little quirky stats about the individual players and the teams and such. How long is usually the prep for a commentary gig?
Well, it'll take a couple of hours at first, especially if you're writing your first sort of like stats packs. But there are some very good resources out there, very helpful. And I think that once you've done a few matches as well, you can delve back into the content that you've done before, change it a little bit. I mean, what I'd always do is I'd always write a little bit of an intro, just so that I had something to go on and to sort of, launch me into the match. And then, I find myself, adding some of the the bits of information that I'd got written down at various points during the match. Whenever somebody did something, if they were on the ball, or if they picked up a booking, or they gotten injured or something like that, whenever there was a break in play, I'd try to use that to bring the information that I'd got written down, into my commentary. But I'd say, when you're first starting out, say if it's the first match in a new league, it'll take a couple of hours, but after that, maybe an hour and a half. And it gets faster and faster. The more that you're doing it.
Yes, no, that's, as I say, case with everything. And then in the early 2010s, obviously you start to do a lot more work with PSG, and Laurent Blanc comes in 2013 as PSG manager, I believe. What was he like to deal with as a manager? Because he has at least a public perception of being a fairly prickly character. Is that fair, or is he, as I say, good to deal with when you get to know him?
No, I'd say that that's fair. Does have a dry sense of humor, which sometimes comes across well, sometimes doesn't. He does tend to have a short temper, especially if he was under a bit of pressure. But overall, I'd say that there were never any issues with me. I always found him quite engaging. He'd be quite honest in a lot of his answers. If he was asked to give an appraisal of a player or somebody's situation, like Javier, for example, who was quite troublesome at that time, he wouldn't hold back. He'd be very forthright in his opinions. And I think he was the right man for PSG at the right time.
Did you manage to develop a good individual rapport with any specific players at the time? Were any individual players really fun to interview?
I mean, I've had good relationships with players through their agents over the years. Javier Pastore, Gregory Van der Wiel. Van der Wiel and I did a fun interview for a publication called Green Soccer Journal, and although that's now defunct, I still have the copies of that interview, and that was quite cool. That was just basically a day spent in a warehouse in Paris. Him trying on a bunch of different clothes, doing a fashion shoot, and then him and I just talking about football, but talking a lot about culture as well. Sort of his journey, from the suburbs of Amsterdam. Coming through the fabled Ajax Youth Academy, sort of breaking into the Dutch national team, and then making it to a club like PSG. So that was really interesting, and he was probably one of the players I got to know better over the years. But the thing that I would say, and I think it's the same at the majority of clubs in Europe these days, players are very inaccessible. Same goes for coaches. They sort of live in a bubble. And the club probably won't do that much to facilitate you speaking with them. Sort of even as a publication like CBS, it's quite hard to get interviews, or harder to get interviews these days than it was before, because a lot of clubs would prefer to do their own stuff in-house because it enables them to control the contents more easily.
Yeah, I've seen that, because there's been a growing trend of individual clubs making YouTube content of fun Q&As and stuff like that, as you say, to make more content.
And it's bred this annoying habit as well of clubs saying, "Oh, we've got an exclusive with one of our own players," which is kind of a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Did your French language skills really pick up by 2012, 2013? When would you say you really mastered it?
Yeah, I'd say probably sort of sometime between 2012, 2015. The one thing that I would say is that I never had a French lesson in my life at school. It was just incompatible for me when I was at the British school to do French at the same time as the other subjects that I was studying. So I wasn't actually able to bring on my French as much as I wanted in those first 3 years that I lived in Paris in the early 2000s. So it really came on the second time, sort of after 2012. And, now I find myself quite immersed in French culture, which is cool. I have a French girlfriend, French dog, about to buy property in Paris as well. So it's it's been a real full cultural immersion over the years.
That's great. That's what it's all about when you live in a foreign city. And during that time, did you also start to develop contacts for stuff like transfer gossip? And yeah, sort of go into that sphere of football writing as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's grown in importance over the years. And I think it depends on the nature of the contacts that you have. There can be some contacts at a club. If you have a particularly good relationship, you can get a steer on a certain story, or sort of how true certain rumors are. But I'll be honest with you, it's not one of my favorite things to write about. And I'm quite grateful that at CBS we have somebody who's a transfer specialist in Fabrizio Romano who takes care of a lot of our transfer related content. I find that the clamor for that sort of stuff is pretty irritating. I mean, the odd transfer story, don't get me wrong, is good. It's especially useful if you're, providing like a profile of a player that nobody really knows that much about. But, just sort of transfer gossip for the sake of it, that really does frustrate me. So, when I do break some transfer information, I try to make it, something new that people haven't done or heard before. Something that actually, moves the story on, as opposed to just saying the same thing that somebody else has already said, just in a different way.
I mean, yeah, Fabrizio Romano is the best, at least. On Twitter, he's seen as the best.
Yeah, he is, and he has a wide range of contacts, which is really impressive. But the thing that I would say about that is Fabrizio doesn't sleep. He's constantly in contact with so many different people. I really pity him during the transfer windows because he's so overworked during those periods. But no, he's a great guy. Very well connected. And if I ever hear something, I always run it past him as well, just to sort of make sure it's in line with what he's hearing.
Yeah, and during that time, did you get to cover PSG in their away trips in the Champions League, like their 2-2 draw at Stamford Bridge in 2015, which knocked Mourinho's Chelsea out of the Champions League? Was that fun, following PSG?
Yeah, I mean, my association with PSG as a journalist has been one big adventure, and it still is. I still do Champions League away days where possible. Obviously, it's not easy with COVID at the moment, but I've seen some great games over the years. I was there for that 2-2 at Stamford Bridge. I was there as well when PSG won at Stamford Bridge and advanced. I was also there when Chelsea knocked PSG out at Stamford Bridge. I was there at Camp Nou for Remontada. And I've seen PSG go to places like Belgrade to play Red Star. Dortmund was really cool. Naples. So I've been to quite a few interesting venues over the years. Club Brugge as well in Belgium. That was a really cool away day. So that's sort of one of the more rewarding aspects of my job. Because it can be quite demanding doing the work. In a foreign environment where you're not necessarily sure you're going to have sort of the right Wi-Fi connection, that sort of thing. But the actual experience of being there, seeing a new atmosphere is really, really cool, and it's one of the things that I like the most about the job. I've been to great stadiums, places like Santiago Bernabeu over the years. The kind of places that when I was a kid watching football on TV, I dreamed about going to one day. So, for me, it was really living the dream. Doing this a lot of time.
So for the remontada, were you like doing live updates or a match report at the end? Because if it was a match report at the end, that must have been a nightmare to continually change the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, because I was working for ESPN, I didn't actually do as much sort of match report kind of stuff. We normally left that to somebody like Associated Press, so the copy would come in and then that would get published. Instead, we'd do sort of the analysis, like player ratings, sort of a reaction piece to what had happened. I think I was doing video hits as well that night. So yeah, obviously highly dramatic. Quite upsetting for a lot of people that I was there with, myself included. Because obviously we wanted to see PSG advance, and not only was it a disappointing performance, there were aspects of it that were quite controversial as well. So it was, that was probably one of the more negative experiences in my journalistic career, but also at the same time, quite valuable. I don't think you could find many more scenarios that could be sort of as crushing to a massive dream project like PSG's than that sort of defeat.
No, I think especially after PSG got the away goal, like they're going through, I think it's probably one of the most crushing defeats in Champions League history, if not the. I also remember Julien Laurent had a bit of a meltdown on the BT Sport live score show that night because I was watching at home. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I thought that when PSG scored, that would be it. And obviously, they had the penalty shout that was rejected as well. But also at the same time, without remontada, PSG wouldn't have Neymar today. It was Neymar, because of Neymar, that Barcelona managed to win that game. He got 2 of the 3 late goals and then set up the third that he didn't score. And it was at that moment when Barca made Messi the sort of figurehead of the comeback, despite the fact that it was Neymar who was largely responsible for it on the pitch. And it was at that moment, because of that Neymar started to really seriously consider moving elsewhere. And we all know what happened a couple of months later when PSG activated his minimum fee release clause and brought him to Paris.
Just rewinding a bit to when you talked about doing work on the Greek league, the Belgian league, the Portuguese league. Did you have to divide up your week to I'm going to do my research on the Portuguese league here, the Belgian league here, or does it kind of come all in one massive waterfall of information?
Yeah, do you know what? My weeks at that time were pretty messy. I was doing some really awful Eurosport shifts a lot of the time. I mean, the Eurosport shifts, when I do them now, are much more concise. They don't last half as long as they used to do. Because, for example, a morning shift used to start around 3 a.m. and go all the way through to midday with three 20-minute bulletins to do. And quite often I find myself between doing those bulletins preparing for a commentary, because if I was doing the shift on, say, the Sunday morning, I'd then be going to the other studio on the other side of Paris to go and do the commentary for the Belgian or the Greek game. So quite often my prep will be done sort of while I'm working on something else. I try and combine the two and just be confident in my ability to get things prepared in time for me to be able to be ready to do both things.
Yeah, I remember those morning bulletins, especially as a kid, because my parents wouldn't allow me to stay up for the midweek Champions League games or midweek, even, I don't know, maybe a League Cup game or something. So I always used to remember waking up at 7 a.m. To watch the bulletins come in. It was good fun. And if you
it's nice to know that people do get up, to watch that. It's quite reassuring, because when you're doing it, it kind of feels like there's probably not that many people tuning in to see the work that you've done. The funny thing about the Eurosport stuff is the places that actually tune in the most to those services, they come, the strongest followings come from the most unexpected of places. Like, for example, Eurosport has a really strong following in Finland because they cover a lot of winter sports. So a lot of our bulletins would actually be watched heavily by Scandinavian countries where they speak, very good English. So yeah, that was always quite an eye opener for me when I was doing those.
Yeah, I often if I had nothing on and I was channel flicking through the TV and I came across Eurosport. Eurosport always seemed to have some winter sports on, either like a biathlon or some cross country skiing or something, which was
Yeah, winter sports, cycling. They've always been big on those, and I know that a lot of people love to watch Eurosport's coverage of the cycling because it's such good quality.
And that bulletin was especially important, I'd say, before like 2014, 2015, 2016, when like everyone started to get smartphones, because that was like the best source of information there was. Definitely for like kids like me who, didn't have a laptop or a phone, and CFAX was kind of a thing of the past by then. So yeah, no, it was very good stuff. Also talking about following teams abroad, how much work have you done with the French national team in covering them at various tournaments and qualifiers?
Yeah, a fair bit. Obviously we had the Euros in France in 2016. And I've followed them to a few different tournaments, or at least games in a few different tournaments. Sometimes I've done that work from a distance. Sometimes I've been there, on site. I was supposed to be covering one of the Euro matches for ESPN before I changed job. We're still waiting for the final details of the tournament before we know exactly what we're going to be covering for CBS. So, we'll see what happens in terms of the upcoming Euro. But no, I've done a fair bit of work with France over the years. It's always a pleasure to go out into the countryside to Clairefontaine, which is always a great experience. The home of excellence for French football, and I've been able to interview some guys over the years. I was sort of interviewing Lucas Digne before he came to the Premier League. Well, he was still playing for PSG at this point, and obviously then went to Roma, Barcelona, and then to Everton. I get on quite well with him and his agents. So to be able to go to Clairefontaine and speak to guys like that, the French national team would normally make a few players available. On like a media day where you can turn up and interview 2 or 3 players and get a bunch of quotes at the beginning of a national squad meetup.
Yeah, because that's become a growing phenomenon. Because I know since Southgate's taken over as England manager, there's now massive media days at St George's Park where like players from the 21s, women's team, seniors, go for a media day. So that should be fun. Is Clairefontaine a really like up to date, state of the art place?
Yeah, I mean it's obviously very well equipped. I mean, I wouldn't say it's absolutely state of the art, but it is very it is very plush. I'd say that the word that I would use to describe it the most is serene. It's very disconnected from everything. It's sort of out in the middle of nowhere. And it's the perfect place for the players to go and retreat. In fact, there was a story earlier this week before the Ukraine match where the France players were staying in a hotel and they had to move out and go back to Clairefontaine to stay because some of the hotel staff members had tested positive for COVID. And I was surprised that they weren't staying at Clairefontaine to start with, considering that they have the facilities there to do that. It's almost like a university campus kind of thing where, you have enough rooms for the players of the different teams, of different age groups.
Yeah. Also with France, did you go out to any of the games in Russia? Or did you?
I didn't. I had hoped to, but no. I did most of my coverage for that from the from the comfort of my own home, which was a shame. It was sort of one of the more bitter moments towards the end of my time with ESPN.
It's also great to cover the tournament at home, though. Well, at least if you're in and around the atmosphere, because there's that famous quote. I can't remember from who, but in referencing the Republic of Ireland at Italia 90, when he says, this journalist says, I missed Italia 90 by being in Italy for it. So there's obviously that side to the coin as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it the cultural side of things like that, when you're staying somewhere over a period of time, that really, it lends more than just, when you go for like an away match, and you're literally there for a number of hours and then heading home. I think when you're on site for sort of weeks on end, if not a month or so, it's really valuable. You get a lot from it in cultural terms. And there's some great journalistic work that's been done over the years from people who have sort of followed a team, whether it's an international team or a club team. In fact, one of my favorite pieces of football writing was The Miracle of Castel di Sangro by Joe McGuinness, who's sadly passed away. But it's a fantastic book, and that really shows you the value of, immersing yourself culturally, over a prolonged period of time.
No, it's one of my favourite football books. It's absolutely, it's inverting the pyramid level, essential reading, in my opinion, for any football fan coming up. Have your colleagues for the French national team, do they enjoy it? Do they enjoy covering it more now as opposed to the just car crash years in between 2006 and 2012?
I mean, I think that they obviously enjoy the success that France are having at the moment. For a lot of them, they weren't around in 1998. They were, just young like me, around 11 years old when that happened. So they weren't able to appreciate it in a journalistic capacity. So, they would have known, the quite traumatic events of South Africa, that sort of stuff. But, now they're getting to enjoy the success that France are experiencing under Deschamps. But, I'd say for me, it was interesting to see the way that the French national team rebuilt itself, qualifying for the 2014 World Cup and then developing from there. I don't think it was that fun covering the French national team before then for a lot of people, because the French public had really fallen out of love with the French national team. They had a lot of trust issues with the players. A lot of there was no real mutual respect between the two. And now since Deschamps has come in, there is a real ability for the public to identify with this group of players.
Yeah, Matt Spiro's done a really good new book, which I read over the summer on that journey from sort of 2006 to 2020. I actually also remember watching the second leg of the France-Ukraine playoff for the 2014 World Cup. My dad is he's an academic in Ukrainian studies, so I've always had an affinity for Ukraine, and he has too. And so that was an especially chastising.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favourite memories, that match, because it was one of the first France games that I was accredited to go to as a journalist. And to see a team fight back like that, and qualify in such dramatic circumstances was, it was really, really special. And it was also the turning point for the feeling towards the France squad from the public. That's when the French players really sort of won back the respect of their fans, and it was also the end of a number of players' international careers, because that was the moment that Deschamps decided to no longer rely on some of the talented players with questionable personalities and just focus on the guys that he felt could buy into the team and squad ethic. And I think that was a really important moment for the French national team. Matt's a friend of mine, and I'm a big fan of his book as well, so I'll pass on the compliments.
Yeah, good, and deservedly so. What was it like when the Benzema Valbuena story came out in? Was it in 2015?
Yeah.
That must, your phone vibrated like crazy for that.
Yeah, irritating. When something like that happens, you're kind of hoping that there's going to be no unnecessary controversies, and then when something like that blows up, it generally tends to stick around for quite a long time. So yeah, obviously it was headline news in France for a while, and still flares up from time to time, seeing as there's still ongoing legal proceedings relating to it. But obviously, it was the end of the international careers for both Valbuena and Benzema, which was very disappointing because Benzema, as prickly a character as he is, was a fantastic player, great to watch. Valbuena as well, he'd really done well to sort of be one of the key figures in Deschamps' rebuild of France. Had a great period sort of in and around the 2014 World Cup when he took over from Franck Ribéry as the main creative element in the midfield. So it was obviously a shame to see his international career fizzle out like it did.
No, it was from a foreign perspective as well. But I also saw on your LinkedIn that you've done various TV appearances for Al Jazeera, CNN, and others. What were they for? Were they for maybe like an interview on the Benzema scandal or something like that?
Yeah, occasionally it's that. I mean, sadly, CNN seem to have a habit of asking me to make an appearance when PSG have gone out of the Champions League. So I have some friends of mine have made a collection over the years of me, sort of looking quite miserable the morning after PSG have crashed out of the Champions League to Barcelona, to Real Madrid, to Manchester United, and take pride in making sure that they have a picture each time I make a media appearance. That they can tune into where I'm talking about PSG, and it's less than flattering. But no, I mean, it's been a real mix of things. Al Jazeera would normally be something that's not necessarily related to what's happening on the pitch. CNN was more sort of related to what had happened on the pitch. And then, the other appearances like Turkish TV, that sort of stuff would be generally about a mixture, but normally it's something reasonably controversial.
Yeah, no, I still remember that that Man United exit in 2019 was just farcical. I still remember the camera panning to Kimpembe's face after he realizes that VAR has given the penalty, and it's just like this stone cold look.
It was a very, very bizarre experience. There was a lot that went on that night that is difficult to explain. Really, we'd sort of been told in the press area that Alphonse Areola would be starting in goal, and then to see Buffon sort of get the nod, just an hour before kickoff, people started to ask questions. Why there was the change made late, and then obviously you had VAR in its infancy. And PSG just putting in a very disappointing performance, and Manchester United side that didn't really have anything to lose, came and put in a very good performance and managed to get a result, which to be honest they quite often managed to do against PSG because they won in the group stage earlier this season as well, despite the fact that PSG ended up going to Old Trafford and winning again like they did a couple of seasons ago. It's almost like they're more comfortable when they play each other away from home than when they're at home.
Yeah. Are you confident for PSG this season in the Champions League?
I don't know if they're going to go all the way. I'm also probably in the minority in that I think that they can actually knock out Bayern. I think it's going to be a tall. I think it's going to be a tall order for them to get past both Bayern and City, assuming that City get past Dortmund. But there are a lot of moving parts to all of the draws that have been made. They're not all quite as clear cut as they maybe seem to be. I think a lot of people are assuming that Chelsea will steamroll past Porto. I'm not sure that's going to be the case. We've seen City underestimate smaller sides in the Champions League over the years, notably Lyon last season. So I think that Dortmund still have a chance there. And with Bayern, Bayern and PSG are very similar in that both have fantastic attacks and they're quite vulnerable in defence. Bayern's midfield, I'd argue, is stronger than PSG's. But, I think Bayern's issue now is mental. It's, they have every trophy in hand that they could possibly have. And it's hard to keep a team winning, at that same pace. Once you've won pretty much everything that there is available to you. So I think that if PSG are hungry enough and apply themselves, they can replicate the sort of performance that we saw at Camp Nou. I don't think Bayern will allow themselves to be thrashed in the same way that Barca were in that first leg. And I do expect it to be closer over the two legs. But I think that PSG have a decent chance of advancing if they really apply themselves in both games.
I agree. One of the final PSG questions, I guess. Were you surprised when news of the Neymar transfer came through in the summer of 2017?
Not really. PSG needed to make a lot of changes. They'd struggled without that talismanic figure since Zlatan Ibrahimovic moved on. So to see them go for somebody like a Neymar or an Mbappe wasn't really that much of a surprise. The big surprise was that they went for both of them, at the same time, and they managed to work out that deal where Mbappe arrived on loan and then the transfer fee was made permanent sort of the following summer. But it was an exciting time, and it's something that PSG really had to do because the project was going stale.
No, it absolutely was. At this minute, I'll open it up. So, Nav, fellow chaps on my sports team, if you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask a question, go for it. But just a general question with your life as a freelance journalist in the past. Like, did you have to be like always on your toes with emails and stuff? Is it being available a lot of the time that's the key, maybe?
I mean, as a freelancer, yeah, it's being available, making those contacts to start with. But once you earn somebody's trust and you sort of make it into the circle of, people who can be potentially given jobs, the offers, come in. I wouldn't say thick and fast, but you have a regular stream of sort of proposals like, do you want to do this morning shift at Eurosport or, this match at wherever it might have been. It was Machinsport at the time. So I'd say that, yes, establishing yourself, you do have to be motivated and prepared to sort of send a lot of emails to get your foot in the door. But once you do prove yourself, you will get more offers for work, and also, your services will probably be suggested to other people, which can also open up new possibilities, especially in quite a small pool of English-speaking journalists as we are in Paris.
No, absolutely. I guess that's the key for up-and-coming, aspiring football freelancers like me and others as well. One of the things I'm really interested in, do you manage to enjoy football as a leisure activity now? Or do you kind of get football overload during the week and so your appetite for it kind of diminishes?
No, football has always been my life, and I do enjoy playing it where possible. Otherwise, sports-wise, I quite often go running, but that's pretty much all we can do really in these COVID times. But no, I don't really ever sort of switch off from football or stop thinking about it that much. Maybe a couple of hours a day at the end of the day if I'm watching like a series with my girlfriend or something like that. But no, generally, football's always there, playing a daily role. But I do welcome the opportunity to sort of play it and move away from just sort of like watching it. The one thing I would say is that when you're working in something that you've been, a fan of, and it really is your passion, it can quite often become a bit of a grind, once it becomes your job. I won't look forward to every match that I'm covering in the same way that I used to, live for live football when I was younger and, tune into as many games as I could. Now it's kind of a bit of a chore to have to watch, 5 games in a week, that kind of thing.
2 more questions then. Sorry if this is a bit of a general basic question, but what would your key piece of advice be to football, so recently graduated people looking to get into football journalism?
I'd say to be patient, don't be disheartened that there aren't too many opportunities out there at the moment, because it is a difficult period with COVID. Be motivated, sort of take the initiative, look for opportunities, pretty much everywhere that you can. And try and find a niche for yourself, because if you can find something that you can do that not that many people are doing, you immediately give yourself added value. I'd also say as well that, I assume if people have done the studies, they are already committed to this idea of becoming a football journalist. But I think a lot of people have to realize that becoming a journalist of any sort, takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of discipline, a willingness to, put your career first over certain things, particularly a social life. So, I'd say that it's important to be all in, when you're trying to establish yourself in the journalism world, because if you're just sort of waiting for somebody to open the door to you for an opportunity, as opposed to you forcing the door open, you're going to be waiting a long time. So, you really have to push the matter as much as you can, almost to the point where you annoy people by constantly being in touch, hound those opportunities, and eventually that sort of, willingness, will pay off in certain opportunities.
Aki, go for it. Unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, John. So I'm from a STEM background, but as Louis and Alfie will attest, I have written quite extensively for our university newspaper and other outlets. Would you say it's still possible for me to get into football journalism if I wanted to?
Yeah, I don't think that there's ever a closed door to getting into journalism. I think it's just a question of sort of how much you're willing to do, in order to establish yourself. It does take time. I've got a friend of mine at the moment who's in his early 40s, who doesn't have a journalistic background sort of in his career, who's recently been studying to go into journalism, and he's been asking me similar questions. And the thing that I would say is, there's never any sort of any age limit to start. You can become a football journalist at any time in your life. It's just I think that you have to give it a lot of time, a lot of effort, and obviously if you've got a lot of varied articles that you can show people of high quality, once you build up that dossier and start getting sort of a variety of different publications in it, you'll find opportunities easier to come by. I don't believe that the door is closed to anyone in terms of opportunities to break into journalism. It's just unfortunately quite an oversaturated market, and obviously at this difficult time with COVID, there are a lot of people out there struggling to find opportunities, and I just hope that not too many of you get disheartened by the fact that there's long periods without possible opportunities.
Thank you very much.
I think Nav, go for it, mate.
Hello, John. Thanks so much for the interview. It was really insightful. So I don't come from the UK or in fact from any Western country, and I'm completely fluent in French and English. And I was just wondering, do you agree that people from a non-Western background would struggle much to get into any French sports, or in fact football media outlet or English football media outlet? I just don't feel like there are a lot of non-Europeans or non-North Americans who even get there. Would you agree, or is there a change, and is there less of a is the football journalism industry becoming more open, or do you think that often the Japanese football correspondents or the Indians or maybe the Brazilians often end up staying in their own countries rather than moving to the UK or France?
No, I think that the market is reasonably open. I mean, I've got an Indian friend who's actually based in Belgium. Who writes for a variety of people, including Forbes. So I think that the opportunities are definitely there. It just depends on the country. Sort of where you base yourself. That's all part of the niche that I was talking about earlier. Because if you can find some way to be somewhere where there's an emerging story like I had with PSG, and you sort of can put yourself in a position where you can provide something that quite a lot of other people can't, like I could about PSG and French football in English. With regards to France as a potential market for aspiring journalists, France, to me, I am a registered journalist over here in France, but I'm very different to a lot of people in that I didn't study specifically journalism. Basically, in the French education system, if you want to be a journalist, you go to journalist school. It's very difficult to establish yourself in French language journalism if you have not gone to a specific school to learn the trade. The French are very specific like that, which can be quite frustrating. Because for me, I sort of managed to pull together a lot of different elements over time to create my profile. Whereas, if you're, for example, a friend of mine who's studying like a master's in the UK at the moment, but he is French, he had to go through years of formation at journalism school in France. He's doing this additional master's in the UK, and then he will come back to France to look for a job in journalism. And the only thing that's going to make him stand out above the other candidates for similar positions is the fact that he's decided to go abroad, do a little bit of studying, and then come back. So, I'd say that I wouldn't call it unique, but I'd say that it's very, very rigid, the system in France, perhaps too much so. I think a lot of aspects of French life, particularly relating to work, really need modernizing. And I hope that, in the future, the more people, not necessarily from French backgrounds will be considered for positions because they add a lot, and I'd say that French football journalism in particular is at a very low ebb right now. There's a lot of things that I see in it that I don't like. There's a lot of plagiarism, for example. People talk about L'Équipe, in quite glowing terms because it's one of the most recognized publications in France. Yet, I had an incident a couple of months ago where I had an exclusive interview with Mitchell Bakker, and the quotes that I put out in our article wound up in a L'Équipe article with no mention of the fact that he was speaking to CBS Sports. And when I challenged L'Équipe about it, no one came back to me. There was no apology, that sort of thing. Nobody owning up to the fact that one of their journalists had plagiarized. And that's not an isolated incident. This happens quite a lot. So I'd say, to be careful about the sort of journalistic environments that you're looking at, because there are some where standards are slipping majorly at the moment, and France, unfortunately, is one of those. I think if you have the quality, and you do things the right way, your discipline will ultimately sort of win out over a lot of these people who are very lazy about the way that they source their stories.
Yeah, Nav, if you want to ask one more.
So just about that. So I lived in a French speaking country, so I used to follow all of the Eurosport, L'Équipe, Canal+, TF1, all the football coverage, and I completely agree because they had, even then there were talks about how much plagiarism there was between especially the bigger institutions, so such as L'Équipe, as you said. And I was more looking at, for example, in France, I know that they care a lot about AFCON, which sometimes the UK doesn't so much. For example, Canal Plus has an exclusive coverage of AFCON, which I've already looked at, and I've talked to journalists who have done that. Would you say that even for these specialized coverages, where they do actually take non-Western journalists, they try to get journalists who have gone through these écoles de journalisme, through Sciences Po and these specialized schools, so then they maybe become more open towards whichever system of journalism they grew through, maybe in their native countries or through the UK?
I mean, I think that these kind of tournaments, are very, very good for offering, opportunities for new journalists to sort of make their breakthrough. I've got a friend of mine who's based in Algeria, and I think he was studying in Canada, and basically returned to Algeria to start carving out a career for himself in journalism. And sort of over the years, he's managed to, put himself in quite a good position and in his home country. For covering the Algerian national team, and that all started out, through him sort of following the team and writing about the team, sort of off of his own back, and then getting offered the opportunity to follow them in these kind of tournaments. Once he impressed at that first one, it's sort of become his career now, and I can see him doing like videos. Educating people on the footballing background, which is really cool. I mean, I don't think that people, people who don't have sort of an academic journalistic background will just be completely rejected out of hand. I just think that people like their lives to be made as easy as possible. So if they're looking at somebody's CV and they just see, an institution that they're familiar with, they'll quite often go for that. It's not a reflection on the person who's applying for the job. It's a reflection on the person who's sort of taking the applications. Unfortunately, France is in major need of overhaul in terms of how they, select people for their jobs. The process has been very, very lazy, and there's a lot of seedy and shady behavior that's been covered up over a long period of time within certain French journalistic institutions, and we're seeing some of that come to the surface now. For example, recently with the allegations against Pierre Menez, which appear pretty damning. He may well find himself sacked from Canal+, and he's been sort of the most recognizable French football journalist for a long period of time. And then you've got Alexandre Ruiz as well, who's recently been let go by beIN. And although people thought he was branching out on his own into Twitch, it's actually turned out that his behavior had raised a lot of concerns within the beIN hierarchy for quite a long period of time. So, I'd say that at this moment in time, it's quite an interesting case study. The development of journalism, because it's clearly in need of new blood. And if you do have sort of a bit of journalistic experience and you speak and write French, I do think that there could be opportunities opening up. And perhaps with the Africa Cup of Nations coming up, it's a good opportunity to potentially launch yourself if that's something that you're looking at trying to do.
One more. I'll go for it.
Yeah, no, I'm just replying. What do you think about all these allegations about why Stéphane Guy had to leave Canal+, and obviously, as you said, Pierre Menez had to just leave. He will probably be sacked. Are the reasons why they were sacked things that were usual in the French journalism industry, and it's just starting to get picked out now, or are they things that shouldn't happen and wouldn't normally happen, but maybe it happened because they started getting at ease with this environment where they were just where they thought they could do anything without any consequences?
Yeah, I definitely think complacency is a major factor in this. I do think that Menez, to a large extent, felt, pretty untouchable. I mean, I think he still feels untouchable now. If you look at some of the stuff that he said recently after being challenged on the topic, it's quite shocking that he said that, he would sort of behave the same way to a male journalist as he would to a female. I think that the French way of thinking is very archaic. I think the sacking of Stéphane Guy, who you mentioned, was just an absolute nonsense. I do welcome, this sort of information coming to light about the likes of Menez, the likes of Ruiz, because it's something that, I think really has to be addressed, because this sort of behavior can't be acceptable. And unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of it in France. There's the ongoing investigation, the ethics investigation of the French Football Federation as well, about misconduct. And there's even the cover up as well of the coach accused of pedophilia in the youth ranks. So obviously all of this is very, very shocking, and just goes to show how much the journalistic environment is in need of change and overhaul. I think that too many people got complacent. They were in their comfort zone for far too long. And it results in them feeling like they're untouchable and behaving in the way that we've seen from the likes of Menez. And I'm sure that Menez and Ruiz won't be the last stories to come to light. It's just a question of some of the journalists out there, whether they're female or whether they're male, just having the courage to speak up and say that there's been unacceptable behaviour in the past. In order for these kind of things to be addressed, because it seems like a lot of these publications and TV channels want to try and cover this kind of thing up where possible. It sounds like there's been more than one or two incidents with Menez over the years. Same with Ruiz. And I think it's quite sickening to learn how Canal Plus has silenced some of its employees from speaking out in the wake of the recent documentary by Marie Portolano. So it's, obviously it's an interesting time for French journalism in the fact that it could change for the better. You just hope that sort of new mentality wins out in what is quite an old-fashioned and stubborn environment.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the questions.